You're watching a Hanford Communities issue briefing, highlighting important environmental cleanup issues at the U.S. Department of Energy's Hanford site in southeastern Washington, issues affecting citizens of the Pacific Northwest and the nation. The Hanford Communities organization was established in 1994 and is comprised of the communities surrounding the Hanford site, forming one voice to advise the Department of Energy on important transition and cleanup issues.
Many of you, I'm sure, know Dwayne Smoker. He was with URS and then AECOM for many years. He is now working on the Testbed initiative. And we also have Richard Grondin here from Permafix. Permafix is a partner also with Waste Control Specialists in Texas. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dwayne. And so what we're doing is we're going to have you make a presentation. Guys, try and hold questions till the end because we're supposed to be using the microphone for questions. And then Alex will speak and then we'll do questions. So thank you very much for coming. And we do have a couple of Hanford Advisory Board people here from the tank committee, so they can share that information back with the HAB.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's just an ultra pleasure to be here, address this honorable group, all the elected officials. You know, I'm a resident, and so I feel good to be here amongst everyone today. I also want to thank Pam for inviting us. There's been a lot of discussion, some articles about the Testbed initiative, and I think maybe not all the information is out there for everyone. So this is a really good opportunity for us to get together and just answer any and all questions and try and dispel any fears and concerns that people have. So with that, again, I'm the project manager for a joint venture company called APT, Aerostar Permafix joint venture. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but I lead that group, and you'll see there's an organization in this presentation. You'll see how it all fits together. So just by way of an overview on the second slide, I thought I would start. I debated really long and hard about whether to do it this way, but I know there has been a lot of questions about why Testbed and how it even came about. So the first thing we're going to talk about, it's all about the money. And I know nobody knows that better than this group, but this is part of a presentation I made in September of last year, and so I'm going to just walk you through it very quickly because it's a lot of stuff that you know, but it does put into perspective why TBI has come about. Then we'll talk about. Okay, I'll talk as fast as I can, and then we'll get to questions. And of course, I'm just down the street, so I can come back anytime. We'll only do 2 shows a day, though. So let me just jump right into it, and these first slides will go very quickly. These are actually sourced material. I don't know if people really appreciate the size and magnitude of what's going on here for the Department of Energy. I'm not here to speak for the Department of Energy, but this is data you can pull up. The magnitude of the U.S. government's environmental liability, and you'll see this bounce back and forth between FY16 and FY17, but is $447 billion. That's the whole package of government environmental liability. Of that, $372 billion belongs to the Department of Energy. And you can see in the first slide how it breaks down between Department of Energy, Defense, and other federal agencies. And then you'll see the DOE environmental liability. And what it does is it represents well over 80% of the entire federal government's environmental liability. And if you look at the $6 billion the DOE spends, what you see is over 37% of their expenditure goes to liquid waste. So as all of us know who have debts in our household, and you look at where your big costs are, if you want to attack things, you tend to go after the big bills. 37% of DOE's money is at liquid waste. And if you look at the numbers, about $2.4 billion a year, over half of it is spent here. So what does that mean? And so in slide 8, and you look at the Hanford budget, what you come down to is our ORP budget is approximately $1.4 billion a year, split between WTP at $690 with plus up based on how our senators and congressmen do, and the tanks around $700 million plus a year. And that's $1.4 billion a year. And we've had that for a number of years. But you really need to drill down a little bit more and ask, well, what does that mean? Again, in perspective, that means we're spending $7.5, call it $8 million a day on liquid waste. That's what we're spending. For the hour you guys are going to sit here today, the aggregate will have spent $8 million. Now, as you guys as cities managers and mayors, how would you like to have $8 million an hour rolling in the door for you to do something with, whether it be roads, water, sewer, fire? It's big money. But here's the problem. It's not enough money because we haven't started operating anything yet. And when we start to operate, these numbers have to go up. And I'm sure Ben and others would tell you the same thing. So these numbers aren't good enough yet. They've got to go up. But in Andrews, Texas, they have a disposal facility, a rather complex disposal facility, unique disposal facility. And they ended up getting a permit modification to their permit that allowed them to dispose of technetium-99 and iodine-129. Two radioisotopes that no one else in the country had in the quantities that Hanford needed to get rid of. The main reason why we're building a low activity waste plant is to deal with those two radionuclides. They like water, they like to go into water, and they like to get into your bones. And they live a long time. So that's why we're on the path we're on here. But all of a sudden in August of 2014, there was a change. And the question became, with this change condition, does that do anything for Hanford? And so what happened is, and we'll talk a little bit in the interest of time, I'll try and go fast, but WCS is unique, and it's the only place next to Nevada, other than Nevada, which has some other political problems, that can take both Class A, B, and C waste. And if you follow the newspaper, they're looking to get a greater than Class C waste license, which would allow our Cesium to go there, and they're also looking to store spent fuel there. Very unique spot. It's regulated by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and just like our state, their authority derives from the NRC. But the important thing is they're able to take our low activity waste, mixed low level waste, without it being vitrified. The other unique thing about WCS is, and if you look on slide 10, you'll sort of see what I'm talking about. They have a number of disposal cells there. They have commercial waste for plants, radioactive, nuclear power plants, hospitals, those kinds of things. They have a wrecker cell, but they also have, and the cell we're talking about is the federal waste facility cell. Only federal waste goes into there. They buried the West Valley melter in that particular cell. Here's the unique part of that cell. When Clay Sell, those of you who remember Clay Sell was Deputy Secretary of Energy, just the day he walked out the door, he signed a letter which said when the federal waste facility is closed, that the federal government will take it back into perpetuity. So unlike the way we are in Washington State, where the state may end up owning the disposal, there the federal government will own that cell and the waste that's buried in it into perpetuity. Very unique situation. So the state likes that in Texas. They don't own it. So the slides 11 and 12 just give you some, and we won't go through it, go a little bit of detail on the WCS facility. One of the reasons why it's able to take tech and iodine is it's sitting on an 800-foot thick clay layer, unique in the country. And then should the waste get through the clay layer into the water is actually, the groundwater is sitting on the ceiling of what the first salt formations for WIP is. So the water is not drinkable and not irrigable, and because there's no driving force for it, it's dry there, and there's no rivers or surrounding bodies of water, it only moves a few millimeters per 10,000 years. So you can't drink it, you can't irrigate with it, it doesn't move, and you're sitting on 800 feet of clay. Where's it at? It's in West Texas, slide 12. It's 40 miles from WIP. So if you've been to WIP, like I say, it's just a real garden spot. No Columbia River flowing through this area there. And of course, it's in the nuclear corridor, which is the kind of Urenco and WIP and other things. So that's how TBI came to be. Big dollars, viability of a program, change condition in the marketplace. Is there something there? And we all concluded there might be something there that we should look at. So now what to do with it? What I'm trying to point out here is what you see on the left side of the slide, to the left of the dotted line, is all on-site activities. To the right side is off-site activities and what we would classify as commercial. So one of the highlights of this program is we're using commercial industry to do commercial things versus everything being on site under a government type of contract. And you'll see why that saves money here in just a minute. You'll also see how this integrates nicely to DFLAW. So what we have, just quickly looking at the flow sheet, you have the double shell tank system with the high level waste supernate. High level waste moves into a pre-treatment system of some sort, whether it's LAW PS, big pre-treatment, or TSCR. We hear about TSCR a lot. From there, we do two things. We filter the waste, and that's to take out suspended solids, and we also ion exchange the waste to pull out the cesium. Two things the NRC said you need to do to your high-level waste if you don't want it to be high-level waste. The filtered material goes back to the tank system. That's what you see coming out the bottom line here. The ion exchanged media, where the cesium is, currently, I think the department is thinking about storing that on a pad. In the past, we've talked about eluting it back to a tank. But the fact is, the cesium will get dealt with and eventually would move on to either be high-level waste or disposed in a disposal facility that would allow you to take greater than Class C waste, like WCS in the future. Very important point is the little reddish box. As we come out of the pre-treat system, and at that point, DOE does a weird determination. They look at the waste, we do a laboratory analysis, and we ask, have we removed the cesium, have we gotten out the filtered material, and at that point they follow 435.1, which is their way that they deal with radioactive waste, and they then do a determination and they say, is it still high-level waste? If the answer is no, then the answer is it's mixed low-level waste. And it can be managed and treated and dealt with as mixed low-level waste. Now here at Hanford, we call mixed low-level waste law, and that's a terminology that we use, but in the regulatory world of disposal and treatment around the world and around the complex, they think of it as mixed low-level waste. What is that? Some radioactivity with a lot of chemicals in it. That's what it is. Okay, now what happens? With TBI, you must do a weir determination. Once it's declared mixed low-level waste, then you ask yourself, is there a place to take it? For TBI, the place to take it is down to Perma-Fix. They have a permit for addressing mixed low-level waste. From there, it gets stabilized and put in a monolithic cementatious form, loaded onto trucks or trains, shipped to WCS, and it goes in the ground. That's testbed in its simplest form. And so with that, also two things that have to happen. We need NEPA coverage, because right now NEPA does not cover moving waste off-site and off-site disposal. And also we need to cycle this weir process because DOE has not done that here. So that needed to be done. Three-phase approach to testbed. Phase one was a laboratory scale approach. That was the infamous 3 gallons of waste. We pulled that waste out of 222S. There was some jars of actual tank waste, and we composited it, ran it through some filters and ion exchange column, came out the other side, mixed low level. Richard stabilized it, and we sent it off to Texas December of last year. Phase two is a engineering scale. Take about 12 months to get through that. That's 2,000 gallons, and that's the infamous 2,000 gallons that you hear about out and around. And in this particular case, we're not in the laboratory now. We're out in a physical facility, and we'll look at that, and we'll talk about how we create the mixed low-level waste. And if the department likes how phase two goes, and if they decide that they want to fund it, then there would be a production scale, and the idea there is to empty a half a tank or a tank of waste and actually move much more towards a production kind of operation. A couple of issues have come up as where's this money come from? Are we taking money away from the plant? Are we, of that $7 million that we're spending, where's that going? The fact is that for the work that we're doing, our team is doing, that is coming from DOE headquarters. It's not site-funded work. The transportation from Richland to Andrews, if you assume a train transport, it's a little more expensive with truck, but for train, is about $15 a gallon. So people have always said, how can it possibly be cheaper to transport waste to Texas? Well, the fact of the matter is that's why trains roll and coal moves and steel moves, and because we're making large monolithic things and you want to move those in big unit trains. Cost drops dramatically. Finally, the cost to actually get it in the ground, get rid of it, and get a certificate of disposal back is approximately $60 an input gallon. So all done and said, $200 a gallon. You show up with a gallon of waste, give them a check for $200, it goes away, never to be seen again, permanently. A couple of things to think about. Take a look at the bottom of 16. I would encourage you to circle under considerations that first bullet. GAO report 17306 indicates the cost to vitrify law at Hanford is estimated at $1,081 per input gallon. $200, $1,081, and in both cases, remember, in both cases, you have to make law, right? You have to do everything that was on the left side of that graphic. So you have to retrieve waste, run it through a pre-treat system, and make law. And so they're saying to vitrify it, $1,081. We're saying to get rid of it out the door, $200. About a factor of 5 is what that comes down to. So what you see in the black boxes is a very simplified DOE version of direct feed law. In fact, I see something just like it laying right here. This is how direct feed law works. And notice that I've drawn a red dotted line, and everything above the line is on-site activities. If TBI phase 1, 2, and if we decide to do 3, that won't be our decision, but somebody else's decision, notice where TBI plugs in. TBI integrates seamlessly to direct feed law. Effectively, once you have law created, which we have to do to run the VIT plant, what you do is you ask yourself, as soon as it's created, you look across the fence, Tank Farms looks across the fence and says, are you ready? And if the answer is no, open the valve, load it to a tanker, and ship it down to Permafix. If you are ready on the VIT plant side, you close the valve, and it goes the other direction, and it goes right into the waste feed tanks into the VIT plant. So there's not any if, then, we, they. If the plant is having trouble getting started, if the plant is slow to start up, if there's delays of any sort, you still have an outlet for law that you're producing. So you can see what the programmatic benefits become almost instantly. I can get rid of DST waste, free up tank space, and that's how it integrates. And the reason why it is, it's about the money. It's all about the money. We don't have enough. Project overview, just let's talk real fast about where we are right now. 2,000 gallons, I'm on slide 20, 2,000 gallons. NEPA evaluation and weir determination being done by DOE, DOE ORP. The waste feed tank we're going to pull the waste from is AW102. The pretreatment location is going to be the 242A evaporator facility, and we can talk a little bit about why that was selected. Pretreatment system is being built by Columbia Energy here in town. They'll build the filter and the ion exchange, and you'll see where that plugs in. Engineering scale, it'll process at the rate of about 1 to 1.5 gallons a minute. I always like to put that in perspective for those of you who have a refrigerator with the water dispenser. That water dispenser dispenses at around 1 gallon a minute. So that's the stream that's going to be passing through this system. That's a gallon a minute. The system is also going to have TSCR-like components in it, so the filter ion exchange will help inform the work that's going on TSCR. So the work and money that's being spent here flops right over to help the TSCR guys.
So once you get this up and running, it's going to take you, what, about 40 minutes to get through?
It takes 2 days around the clock, and once they're running, 2 days we'll be done with our 2,000 gallons.
And then the plan is to
take it all down. No, because they need the evaporator to, there was a huge amount of debate about evaporator versus tank farms. The decision finally came down to our friends here. It wasn't their decision, but where can we get the permit the best, the fastest? 242A has a RCRA permit, and so the feeling was that it's a robust facility, easier to go there. There was a whole other camp that said, no, we want to go to the first feed tank that's going into WTP because all of the data is there, the waste is characterized. We ended up in 242. That means we have to get the equipment out and ready for the next evaporator campaign. Let's see, what else can I say? We've talked about, after that, it goes down to Permafix and then on to WCS. Slide 21 is just a pretty picture. For those of you who have not visited this area, the upper right-hand corner of slide 21 shows the AW tank farm. The blob you see in the middle is the evaporator facility. Lower right-hand corner, a little closer picture of the evaporator facility. What you see on the left is an artist's conception of what this equipment will look like. Effectively, the bulk of the equipment is located in the pump pit, which is below the ladder there. This facility was picked because it has pumps and waste moves in and out of here. Things will be put into totes, plastic double wall totes that will move down to Permafix in that way. For those of you not familiar with Permafix, what you see on slide 22 is a picture of Permafix aerial picture, and you see their mixed waste facility is there in blue. A couple of things to keep in mind. Permafix has a rail spur that goes into their facility. WCS has a rail spur goes into their facility, so this makes transfers very, very nice. All things moving and being transported are transported under DOT regulations, and so transportation will not be an issue. Project status.
Can you summarize, please? Because we need
You bet.
to talk and the meter's good.
I will summarize with this. We don't see a lot of downside in this program. It's huge return on investment. You get double shell tank space back if we tend to move on. We don't have to build any new capital facilities, don't have to tear anything down on site. We don't take away any jobs. In fact, jobs go up because now you shift it to waste retrieval. You have huge opportunities on the site to redo your system planning because all of a sudden you have a pathway out. It integrates with WTP, takes nothing away from that. Most importantly, going back to the money, it's less expensive and it shows near-term progress. The guys who keep printing the money and sending us the money need to see progress out here for their $1.4 billion. And anytime we put waste in the ground somewhere permanently gone, that's a good news story for every year that you folks who go back and lobby for the money, that's a good news story for you. 3 gallons isn't enough. 2,000 isn't enough. Empty a tank, that might do it. There you go.
Okay, I guess I have to use the microphone. I think the state supports the concept of TBI. Ultimately, I think what we're really challenged by right now is the timing for a couple reasons. It's EM1 is on a super fast track. She has said she wanted to get the waste treated and in the ground by December, which I think even the local DOE folks working on this find super challenging. But in terms of time and resources, there's a slew of ecology staff that have to now get diverted off of other priorities to do this, because there's a fair amount of permitted facilities that we need to do permit amendments and things on. And in the numbers we've heard and the talks we've had with congressional staff about funding, a lot of these guys' work is funded by this special fund at headquarters, but there's, we've heard estimates from 12 to 15 million for the 2,000 gallons of the Testbed initiative total. And 4 million would be coming from headquarters, according to what we've heard. Again, we're not in the middle of all this. But then the rest comes out of tank farm operations. And it may not come from WTP, but it does come from potentially single shell tank retrievals. And we have been contacted by the Department of Energy about moving out consent decree deadlines on single shell tank retrievals. And that's a challenge for us. And so I think the state is supportive of the concept and getting waste out of the state, and if WCS wants to take it, it's a safe facility, amen, state of Texas is on board, that's great. It's just right now, the timing of this is really tough, and it doesn't seem like this is a technology we really need until we have that need for supplemental waste treatment, and that's in the 2030 timeframe. So that's where the state is right now, but we've been having ongoing conversations with the local DOE folks, with the permanent fix folks, and I guess Ann White is going to be talking to the director of the Department of Ecology. They're trying to schedule a call today, and one of the big topics is the Testbed initiative and where the state is on that and the various challenges. So.
But Alex, isn't it better from the state's perspective to see something moving out of the tanks in order that we continue to get federal funds to clean up the entire basically site? If we wait till 2032, we are not in a position to continue to ask for funding at the levels that we're asking in order to even meet the milestones. So I think a broader vision needs to be looked at from leveraging or requesting the funds and getting state milestones met. This provides an option for us to go back to Congress and say that we are moving things out of the, stabilizing it and moving it out. And that's ultimately the goal, which might lead to more dollars to come in to help clean up the remainder of the site.
No, I hear you, and I'm happy to take that back to Maya and the rest of the state. And it's not that we necessarily, we do think the best time frame is the 2030s, but even if we move forward on it, I think that the real challenge is just it's go, drop everything else and work on this right now. And I think that's what's really challenging. If it was a sort of more realistic schedule that maybe went beyond the 12 months you guys have been talking about and went to more like a 16, 18 months, even that would be less challenging for us.
I just like to say this is a very, very good presentation, and it's understandable, and it makes sense, and I hope we do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of upside from a dollar perspective, right? So again, sometimes, my observation is that the state wants the perfect and isn't willing to take the good in the interim. And so, that's political challenges basically, right? But it's a funding challenge when we go back to DC, and it's one that I've tried to express to our delegation, because we have very powerful senators right now, but they're not going to be senators forever. Like that time frame of 2030, I doubt if Patty Murray's going to be head of appropriations if she's the Democrat or, the minority member on appropriation. And that has a huge impact. And playing that game is dangerous in my estimation. So it's, it's like just about everything. There's a little bit of leverage here and there. So I appreciate the state is open-minded. It's a little bit like any negotiation. When you say the 12-month thing, she comes in, she wants to make a mark. Maybe that is too optimistic, but if you don't set targets, nobody ever hits them. And another thing I've always noticed about the Department of Energy, and maybe local contractors who benefit as a direct result, hey, why don't we just kind of slow this bad boy down, because we're all making money and we can do this. Well, if you're a local community, and we represent those local communities, and you really want this stuff cleaned up, well, let's get it cleaned up. And let's take the good, and we can maybe get to perfect somewhere down the road, but let's not forget what we can accomplish now.
To find out how you can become more involved in this important regional issue, or to have a Hanford Communities speaker talk to your organization, Contact the Hanford Communities at 509-942-7348 or visit our website